Revealed, how one mountain man's touching journey with a pregnant widow changed his life forever. In the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, a story unfolds that challenges the very essence of loneliness. Jack, a fiercely independent mountain man, had built a life of solitude in Maplewood, a tight-knit town where secrets were as scarce as quiet moments. He spent days at his family's crumbling homestead, shoveling dirt and heartbreak, relentlessly avoiding the pain that had twisted his heart since the accident. But everything changed the day he met Sarah, a pregnant widow, in desperate need of help. The gossip around town crackled like dry leaves in autumn. Whispers filled the air about how Jack, the gruff loner, dared to step out of his cocoon of solitude to lend a hand to someone else. Sarah walked through Maplewood's quiet streets, shadowed by loss. Her husband, a valiant veteran, had been snatched from her life too soon, leaving her helpless and afraid. The day Jack found her, her eyes were sunken, her spirit tethered to memories that haunted her every step. Then came a moment as fragile as a spider's web when their gazes locked. A quiet understanding passed between them, igniting a flicker of hope. Jack felt a tightness in his chest when he glimpsed her cracked hands, burying her emotions beneath the weight of survival. He knew the pain of gripping loss all too well. He had learned to rely on nobody, wrapping himself in layers of self-imposed silence, yet here was this woman, reminding him of everything he had buried. As he offered to help her mend her home, each swing of his hammer echoed like a heartbeat, stitching together their spirits against the backdrop of Maplewood's watchful eyes. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Jack repaired the leaky roof over Sarah's head, he found himself battling more than rotten beams. He fought against an avalanche of feelings that threatened to crack open his hardened exterior. Each jest from townsfolk felt like a stone thrown into still water, rippling with judgment. Yet in the midst of it all, Jack began to feel the warmth of connection, feel like the first hints of spring after a relentless winter. But the real storm hit the day Sarah's baby went into distress. Panic settled in like a heavy fog. Jack, stripped of his barriers, stood before the townspeople not just for Sarah, but for himself too. He could run back to solitude, escape the risk of hurting again, but this family, whoever they would become, was worth every precious moment. It was a battle of heart and convictions, as eyes watched and whispers spiraled. Could he rise above the prejudice, the voices that bounced between homes, rooted in fear and misunderstanding? As Jack's determination grew, an unexpected confrontation from a neighbor threatened to rip through the fragile fabric they had sewn together. Unraveling deeper biases, would Jack challenge not just the minds of Maplewood but his own? With the stakes at their peak, would he find the strength to fight for a connection tethered by pain? Jack stood at the forefront of something bigger, and his heart thundered like wild hooves in a stampede, leaving readers breathless for what would unfold next. The sun dipped low over Maplewood, casting long shadows that danced over the dirt paths. Jack felt the tension in the air, thick and cloying, as he stood amidst the gathering crowd. The whispers grew louder, like a rising tide, stitching fear into the hearts of those who watched. He could see the worry etched on Sarah's face, her gaze flitting from him to the onlookers. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just about helping Sarah, it was about standing up for what was right. "Jack, you don't have to do this," Sarah whispered, her voice tinged with both fear and admiration. "You're not alone anymore," he replied, words tumbling from his lips. As he pushed through the crowd, every face felt like an accusation. "I'm here for you and that baby." One man stepped forward, shoulders squared, his voice dripping with disdain. "Ain't right, Jack? She's a widow, you're a broken man. People see what you're doing and it ain't good." Jack clenched his fists, heat rising in his chest. For years, he had been the town's pariah, a man whose heartache was worn like a heavy cloak. But Sarah's presence had ignited something deep within him, something worth fighting for. "I don't care what you think," he blasted back, surprising even himself. The crowd fell silent, taken aback by his intensity. "You don't know the pain we've both suffered. But we're stronger together." Around him, the townsfolk exchanged glances, whispers muted by the rawness of his words. Jack's heart pounded fiercely like a war drum, emboldened by the fire newly stoked in his chest. He faced the crowd, each heartbeat echoing with determination. "Life is a messy affair, folks. We all carry burdens, loss, fear, anger. But hiding in shadows won't help. I refuse to let Sarah and her child face this alone. I refuse to retreat to the darkness again." There was a shift in the air, a breath caught in the throats of those who stood listening. Slowly, a woman stepped forward, her face softening. "You're right, Jack. We've all lost someone, we can't turn our backs." More neighbors began to murmur agreements, and the tide began to turn. Jack felt his breath hitch in his throat, hope spiraling like sunbeams breaking through dark clouds. But uncertainty gripped his heart tightly. Would they truly stand with him, or would the fear of change draw them back into silence? In the fading daylight, Jack turned to Sarah, who was watching him with wide, teary eyes. "We can do this together," he said softly, his voice a soothing balm against the rising tension. Just as she reached for him, a loud crash echoed behind them. A group of men, emboldened by anger, stormed forward, their faces hardened by years of stubbornness and judgment. "Enough of this nonsense," one of them growled. "You think you can change things here, Jack? Who do you think you are?" As they closed in, Jack's instincts screamed at him to protect Sarah. His heart raced wildly, adrenaline pumping as he readied himself for the fight ahead. The world around them blurred, faces merging into a single mass of hostility. Jack's resolve fortified like iron as he stood between Sarah and the approaching storm. He faced the men, muscles taut, ready for whatever came next. Would he hold his ground against the rage of tradition? Or would their shared pain unite them against a tide of animosity? The moment hung in the balance, charged and electric, begging the question, what would be the cost of forging a new life, if it meant standing toe-to-toe with the very fabric of their past? Both fear and hope hung in the air, swirling like wild winds in autumn. Jack breathed in deeply, determined to embrace whatever storm lay ahead. Jack felt as though time had stalled, every heartbeat pounding so hard it threatened to burst from his chest. The hardened men before him radiated anger, their eyes flickering with judgment and an unwillingness to let go of the past. He could hear Sarah's soft breath, mixed with the rustling of the crowd, all waiting for something, anything to break the tension. "Step aside, Jack," the lead man growled, fists clenched tightly by his sides. "Let her be. You don't belong here." His words stung like a slap, but Jack didn't budge. "You think your fear can control us?" he shouted, voice strong, echoing off the surrounding buildings. "You don't get to decide what's right or wrong. You don't get to decide who deserves a chance." The crowd murmured uneasily, some faces shifting to concern as emotions surged like a tide threatening to drown them. Sarah edged closer, her hand brushing against Jack's arm, a silent plea for solidarity. He felt her resolve, calm yet fierce, flowing into him just when he desperately needed it. "Jack, please," she said softly, her eyes pleading. "If this gets out of hand, listen." Jack interjected, raising his voice to envelop the thrumming silence. "We've all lost someone, haven't we? This town has been through hell and back, but you can't rewrite history by shunning those who dare to change. Strength lies not in the scars we wear but in the love we give moving forward." He could see some of the hardened faces starting to soften, confusion creeping in like dawn after a long night. The men weren't monsters, they were just men afraid of losing control over the life they knew. "Since when did love become a crime?" he pressed on, his words laced with desperation. "Since when did sharing a burden between us create walls instead of bridges?" One of the men, a burly figure named Tom, glanced at the others around him, uncertainty flickering within their ranks. You're talking about things that don't matter here, Jack. He shot back, but his voice lacked the conviction it once held. They matter to us. Sarah interjected, her voice rising with unexpected force. To me and this baby. We can't keep living in darkness and fear. We need to build something new, something real. The truth of her words settled over the crowd, a blanket of realization weaving through. Jack's heart raced as the space between anger and understanding wavered, still tenuous but with threads of possibility glimmering amid the shifting emotions. Tom hesitated, glancing toward the others who had stood with him. Each face bore the weight of their shared history, their grief hanging in the air. For just a moment, the world around them faded, families, losses, hopes all hanging there like electric currents waiting to spark. Maybe it's time for something different, Tom finally muttered, his voice quieter, wavering. The crowd shifted again, absorbing the words as if they were full of light. Jack felt a rush of forceful warmth ignite within him, pushing back against the shadows that loomed. We all deserve another chance. Together. Let us rewrite our story. Yet, just as the tension seemed to break, a loud shout rang out from the back of the crowd. You think you can change Maplewood, Jack? This is our home. Who are you to say what's best? It was another voice, far harsher, pulling the thread of hope taut once again. Jack's stomach dropped, the uncertainty crashing in like waves against the shore. Would they embrace this new course, or had he stirred up something that might be too great to hold back? He squeezed Sarah's hand tighter, watching the shadows creep back in, the heaviness in the air thickening with doubt. Was he prepared to face this unknown, risking everything for the flicker of a brighter tomorrow? As the crowd swayed with conflicting emotions, Jack's mind raced with the question, would this moment ignite the change they needed, or would it plunge them further into darkness? Jack's heart pounded as the voice from the back echoed through the square, each word sharper than a knife. Uncertainty gripped the air like a thick fog, and he felt the chill seep through his veins. He forced himself to look at the crowd, searching for a glimmer of understanding amidst the flash of anger on their faces. Who am I? He repeated, a defensive edge creeping into his voice. I'm just a man trying to fight for a better future, just like you all want. But the voice from the back was relentless. You can't just waltz in here and act like you know what's good for Maplewood. You're an outsider, nothing more, nothing less. The murmurs grew louder, swirling around him, a cacophony of conflict. Jack glanced at Sarah, her eyes wide with worry but still steady, her grip on his hand firm. She believed in him. He couldn't let her down. Look around, Jack urged, his voice breaking through the noise. This town has been haunted by loss long enough. We have to face our pain together, not isolate ourselves because of it. Tom stepped forward, the flicker of rebellion still dancing in his eyes. You think we want to keep reliving the past? You think we're cowards? You're not cowards, Sarah interjected, her voice cutting through the tension like a beacon. You're survivors. But surviving isn't enough anymore. We need to thrive. The crowd hesitated, drawn to her passion, hearts softening just a shade. Jack could see it, the faintest spark of connection beginning to emerge like a bud breaking through winter soil. Imagine a Maplewood where we don't hide from our pain, but share our burdens, Jack continued. We can forge something beautiful from our scars. We owe it to ourselves and to those we've lost. From the back, a man began to step forward, his brow furrowed. And what about the ones who want to change? What if they fight back harder? Jack felt a lump in his throat. Change was frightening. It could be brutal. But buried beneath his fear was a fiery determination. They might fight, yes, Jack said, his conviction swelling. But we can stand united. Love is stronger than any fear. As he spoke, Jack sensed the crowd's energy shifting. Emotions intermingled, the fear, the hope, the longing for connection. A flicker of vulnerability arose in the faces he once thought hardened beyond repair, and then a woman stepped into the light, her cheeks tear-stained but her spirit fierce. I lost my son to the darkness of this place, she said, voice quivering but steady. If we could change this town, maybe it wouldn't have to happen again. A collective gasp rushed through the crowd, eyes widening in empathy, hearts touched by her pain. Jack could see the walls crumbling slightly, hearts beginning to open, yet, just as the atmosphere began to shift, a voice broke through the stirring moment. You really think you can convince all of us? What if we don't want your change? It was a sneer from another side of the crowd, the tension thickening once more. Jack inhaled sharply, feeling the fragile heartbeat of hope dancing precariously in the air. Would it hang on or shatter into a million fragments? He had a choice to make, not just for himself or for Sarah but for Maplewood. We face the fear together. Jack shouted, pulling his shoulders back, resolute. If we stand apart, we guarantee our failures. Let us take this step together. The crowd rippled with uncertainty, but beneath it all lay the electric hum of something new, a yearning for belonging, for understanding beyond fear. As he looked out at their faces, Jack sensed the weight of what was at stake. He was ready to fight for it, but would they follow? A voice in the back called out again, what if it costs us more than just the past? Jack held them all, eyes darting across the sea of faces, some hopeful, some hardened. Then let us face that cost together. But before he could finish, Sarah's gasp shattered the moment, drawing his attention behind him. What he saw sent ripples of dread down his spine. A figure stood in the shadows, watching someone he never expected to see again. Jack's breath hitched. Uncertainty flooding his chest. Could this be the key to their past, the catalyst for the change they so desperately needed? Jack's pulse raced as he turned to face the figure emerging from the shadows. The faint light caught the familiar outline, and his breath caught in his throat. It was Nathaniel, an old friend from his youth, someone he hadn't seen for years. Anger and confusion mingled within him. Why was Nathaniel here, and what did he want? Nathaniel's voice cut through the square, low and steady. You have to listen to me before it's too late. The crowd shifted, curious eyes now trained on Nathaniel. Jack stepped back slightly, unsure if the memories were on Nathaniel's side or his own. You chose to leave, Nathaniel. You walked away from all of this. Why should I trust you now? Because I know the truth, Nathaniel replied, stepping closer. You think you can make Maplewood better? You have no idea what you're getting into. A few murmurs echoed through the gathering. Jack felt their skepticism growing, fear swirling once more. The fragile thread of hope he had woven suddenly felt like it might snap. What truth? He shot back, his anger flaring. I'm trying to help. I know about the secrets buried here, Jack. You don't understand how deep the darkness runs. You're risking everything. Everything? Jack echoed incredulously, glancing past Nathaniel at Sarah's anxious face. You think I care about my safety when lives are at stake? Maybe you should, Nathaniel replied, his words sharp, but his eyes were pleading. Some don't want change. There are people who will stop at nothing to keep this town in chains. Jack clenched his fists, fighting the storm of emotions brewing inside him. And hiding isn't a solution. It's time we stood up for Maplewood. But who are you really fighting for? Nathaniel retorted, a challenge hanging in the air. Jack's heart raced. The word stung, striking a chord deep within him. Was this all for him, or was there something larger at play? As the crowd looked on, Jack felt the weight of their hope resting on his shoulders. He took a step toward Nathaniel, the fire in his gut igniting further. We're fighting for each other. For the ones we lost. For the future we deserve. Before Nathaniel could respond, Sarah took a step forward, her voice rising above the tense whispers. Jack's right. We cannot keep living in fear of the past. We owe it to those we've lost to be brave now. Several people shifted uneasily, caught in the tide of emotion that surged through them. Jack could see a few nodding, their guarded expressions softening just a bit. The hope flickered like a candle amidst a strong wind, then Nathaniel raised a hand, his eyes simmering, but it was clear he was wrestling with something deeper. You think this is just about you two, standing here and talking? It's about what happened. Do any of you even know the truth behind what brought us here? Jack felt a chill, instinctively glancing at the growing shadows around them. You can't bring that back now. We're moving forward. Nathaniel held his stare, and it was the hurt in his eyes that pushed Jack to the edge. You really want to know what's at stake? Ask the town, ask the families before you step too far. The square fell silent. The echo of Nathaniel's challenge rang out, heavy with implications. Jack's heart sank as he looked at the faces in the crowd, saw their uncertainty, and felt the veils of skepticism threatening to pull everything back under. Could he really break the cycle of pain? Or was there something darker weaving through the very fabric of Maplewood that they had yet to uncover? Help us, Nathaniel, Jack pleaded, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. Help us understand. But before Nathaniel could speak, a heavy silence filled the square again. Jack sensed the moment crackling with uncontrollable energy. Something was about to break free, something that might change everything. As Nathaniel opened his mouth, a distant rumble echoed overhead, sending a shiver through the crowd. Thunder, or was it something more sinister? Let us not wait, Jack urged, unsure of how long the fragile peace would hold. Tell us what we need to know before it's truly too late. The tension escalated, and the storm overhead mirrored the turmoil within the hearts of Maplewood. Would they be able to confront the shadows lurking just behind their past? Jack felt a mix of dread and anticipation as the winds began to howl what truths would be revealed next. The air crackled with tension, like the heavy stillness before a storm. Jack watched Nathaniel's expression shift from uncertainty to resolve as he opened his mouth, preparing to share something vital. The gathering in the square leaned in closer, hovering on the edge of anticipation. I didn't want to come back, Nathaniel began, his voice wavering slightly. But after everything that happened, I realized that we all have a stake in this town. You deserve to know why change was never allowed here. Why even the brightest hopes seemed to fade away as the wind howled. Nathaniel paused, scanning the crowd, his gaze landing on familiar faces. Jack felt the crowd's energy shift again, a mix of fear and curiosity swirling around them. What are you trying to say? Jack pressed, his heart racing, every nerve ending alive with anticipation. He caught sight of Sarah beside him, her eyes wide, reflecting the storm inside her too. Nathaniel drew a deep breath. Years ago, there was a tragedy, a well-kept secret. It changed everything for this place. The lives that were lost weren't just random. They were tied to something bigger, something sinister. The murmurs escalated, rippling through the crowd like a wave crashing against the shore. Jack's mind raced, piecing together fragments of conversations, remnants of whispered fears that had seeped into the very foundation of Maplewood. He had heard rumors of the past, but never had anyone dared to lift the veil. Tell us. Jack's voice cut through the noise, steady yet pleading. There was an urgency pulsing in his chest, a fierce desire for truth. It was a stormy night like this one, Nathaniel continued, his voice a haunting echo of nostalgia and sorrow. A group of miners, trapped deep in the earth, begged for help. We tried to save them, but the town needed to protect its own. To preserve a facade. They sealed the mine instead. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Jack felt as if the ground beneath him had shifted. He remembered vague stories, families lost, whispers of a cover-up. They were true. All of them were true. And then there was a fire a few weeks later. The families demanded answers. Nathaniel pressed on, his eyes glistening with emotion. Some wanted justice. Others, safety. They were told to stay quiet. To move on, to forget, but the truth doesn't disappear. It festers. Jack's breath hitched, and a knot tightened in his gut. It suddenly felt clear the shadows that loomed over Maplewood weren't just memories, but rather a legacy of grief and denial, and it had left scars on everyone who lived there. What do we do now? Sarah asked, her voice breaking through the weight of their shared pain. How can we move forward when the past haunts us still? Jack sensed the crowd's restlessness rise, like the swell before a breaking wave. He turned to Nathaniel, frustration spilling into urgency. Is there any hope? Is there any way to make this right? Nathaniel met his gaze, fierce determination shining in his eyes. Yes. But only if you're ready to face the truth. Only if you're willing to challenge those in power and help the families who are still suffering before they are silenced forever. Thunder rumbled ominously overhead, and Jack felt every heartbeat surge as the collective weight of their fears loomed. Memories of the past crashed over him like a torrential wave, and he realized he had a choice to make. Together then, he declared, steady and strong. We start fresh. We make them listen. Cheers erupted from the crowd, faces brightening with a flicker of hope, but Jack's own heart remained heavy. Even amidst the energy, he could feel the shadows lurking. Don't doubt what is at stake, Nathaniel warned, the intensity palpable. Because the moment those who want change push back, they will strike harder. And as the winds whipped through the town square, Jack understood the path ahead was fraught with danger. Would they find the strength to confront the darkness of their history? Are we ready? He asked, voice rising against the wind, galvanizing those gathered around. Are we ready to stand together for Maplewood's future? As hands gripped shoulders, determination resonated through the square. But what awaited them in the face of unyielding resistance? Would they uncover more secrets, or unearth deeper fears? With the storm gathering above, the time for action was now. Jack's resolve deepened, yet uncertainty nagged at him. How far would they have to go to reclaim their town? What would they find waiting on the other side of the truth? As Jack's words hung in the air, the crowd's energy shifted palpably. It was as if a spark had ignited within their hearts, binding them together as one collective voice against an oppressive past. The cheers morphed into a chorus of determination, echoing off the aging buildings that stood witness to the town's suffering. Jack felt the thunderous applause around him, yet his stomach churned with anxiety for what was to come next. Nathaniel raised a hand, silencing the crowd. This isn't just about voices in the square. It's about action, he said, his tone more somber now. We'll need to reach out to the families still affected by this tragedy. They can't keep burying their pain. We can't let them be silenced any longer. Jack nodded, already feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He exchanged glances with Sarah, her eyes brimmed with both fear and unwavering support. They both knew what this meant. Their lives, their families, everything they had ever known was now intertwined with a mission far greater than themselves. What's our first step, then? Jack asked, voice steady amid the lingering rumbles of thunder above. He felt the crowd's anticipation shift towards Nathaniel, the man who held the key to their past. We must gather the families together, hear their stories, and find out what they need, Nathaniel advised, a new flicker of hope radiating from him. But we should be prepared. Not everyone will want to speak. The shadows have a way of creeping back in. Jack's heart raced. Realizing he'd have to walk through those shadows, face the ghosts of Maplewood's history, he felt a chill creep over him. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. We need to show them we're ready to fight for our town. As the crowd broke off into smaller groups to organize, Jack felt a surge of motivation. But as he glanced at Sarah, concern flickered across her features. What if they turn against us? She asked, her voice low enough for only him to hear. What if the past is too painful to face? I know, Jack replied, feeling that knot tighten again. But we can't stay silent anymore. If we do, it'll swallow us whole. In the following days, Jack, Nathaniel, and a handful of other brave souls reached out to families across Maplewood. They knocked on doors, shared stories at community gatherings, and invited everyone to share their truth. Each meeting unearthed grief and anger, but also a spark of hope. Slowly, the shadows began to lift. On one particularly cold evening, gathered in the old community center, Jack found himself sitting opposite Eleanor, a widow whose husband had been one of those miners trapped so long ago. Her hands trembled as she spoke, revealing layers of loss and regret. The more she spoke, the more the room resonated with a collective heartache. Jack listened intently, feeling the depth of her pain settle into his bones. Through her tears, he saw a raw courage that reflected in every story shared. "Sometimes I wonder if speaking the truth will only hurt more," she admitted, wiping her eyes. "But keeping it inside has hurt longer." Jack's heart ached for her. "You're not alone anymore, Eleanor. We'll be with you every step of the way," he promised, feeling the weight of his own emotions crack through the facade he had built up. By the time they made the final preparations for the town meeting, excitement mixed with apprehension filled the air. Jack pressed against the growing tide of fear threatening to engulf him. The night before, he could barely sleep, too aware of the battles ahead. His mind swirled with thoughts, questions, doubts, the same questions every family member shared, each one driven by the hope of breaking a cycle of silence. When the day arrived, the town square felt electric. Families gathered, old grievances surfacing as Jack stepped up to the makeshift podium. He cleared his throat, ready to address the community. But just before he spoke, a powerful storm rolled in. Dark clouds gathered ominously overhead, and a sudden gust of wind swept across the square. "Is this a sign?" he wondered, glancing at Nathaniel, who would be standing just behind him. With the tension tangible in the air, would the weight of their history finally collapse on them? Or would they rise, stronger than the forces trying to keep them bound? He steadied himself, gripping the edges of the podium. This was only the beginning. What awaited them in the heart of their revelations? As the first raindrops began to fall, Jack took a deep breath, ready to wield his voice against the storm. Let us bring the truth to light. In that moment, amid the heavy gathering clouds, he sensed they were on the brink of something monumental. But what awaited them were not just answers, but perhaps even deeper betrayals and truths they had yet to uncover. The first drops of rain collided with the pavement, creating a rhythm that seemed almost in tune with Jack's pounding heart. As murmurs rippled through the crowd, he recognized the weight of what was about to unfold. He scanned the faces before him, some tense, others hopeful, each marked by personal histories that beckoned for acknowledgement. That he began, voice steady yet passionate. "Today we take a stand. We unveil the pain that has lingered too long in the shadows. We may be small in number, but our voices can echo fearlessly against the injustices we've faced." The wind whipped through the crowd, amplifying his words and sending a shiver through him. A few feet away, Sarah stood with her arms crossed, her worry mirrored in the faces surrounding her. Jack saw her shift, her lips parting as if she could feel the surge of strength at his back. He was grateful for that silent support, but there was also a flicker of fear in her eyes. Could they truly confront the past without unearthing more trauma? "Yes, the past is painful," he continued, "but burying it has only brought more sorrow. It's time for healing, for unity. Together, we can find closure and rebuild." Each word felt like a stone dropped into the water, creating waves that spread outward, bouncing off the hearts in the crowd. As he spoke, a woman at the front stepped forward. Her face was lined with worry, yet her voice rang strong. "Jack. What if they refuse to speak? What if this only opens old wounds?" Jack nodded, thankful for her question. "It might. It might hurt like hell at first. But remember this, healing often requires discomfort. We owe it to ourselves to listen, to share, and to understand." The rain intensified, but nobody moved. They were pinned to his words, thirsty for reassurance, craving connection. Then, from the back, a familiar voice broke through. "I just want the truth, Jack. Whatever it brings." It was Eleanor. Jack's heart sank but also soared. Here was a woman ready to embrace the hard reality of her story. A ripple of murmurs traveled through the crowd, others echoing her sentiment as they nodded fervently. "Okay, then," Jack said, feeling the growing intensity in the air. "If we are ready to embrace our stories, let's make sure we are prepared to support each other through it." He felt the electricity in the crowd shift as they leaned in. Was this the moment they would break free from their decades of silence together? The rain was relentless now, washing away the grit and dust of the past. Each droplet became a metaphor for cleansing. Yet, Jack knew that the harder truths could only be revealed in the right light. The town had suffered for too long under a shroud. Now, it was time to raise the curtain, but before he could continue, the ground rumbled beneath the weight of the storm. Gasps filled the air as a loud crack echoed through the square. Jack looked up. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the faces of the crowd, highlighting the fear and determination that waged a war within each soul. The moment felt monumental. It was as if nature itself was echoing their internal struggle. A new voice rang out from the crowd, a man Jack recognized. "We want our stories told, Jack. But know this: there are those among us who will fight to keep the truth buried." It sent a chill down his spine, a sudden reality check. There were still those who thrived on silence, who preferred the old ways. Jack took a deep breath, staring into the faces that had come for truth. "Then we will stand together and face whatever comes. This is our moment." The crowd erupted in a chorus of cheers, each voice layered with resolve. As the storm raged on, Jack felt the connection he had with the people of Maplewood strengthen. While trepidation lingered, a newfound purpose began blossoming. But as his vision sharpened through the pouring rain, one nagging thought remained: could they truly confront the deepest shadows of their past, or were they merely stepping onto the brink of chaos? The winds howled, drowning out potential answers, but Jack pressed on. "No matter what happens today, together we will discover the truth." Just then, a figure emerged from the crowd. A familiar face that sent his heart racing, one that he never expected to see here, not today, not in this storm. What secrets did she carry with her? What role would she play in this story? And as he locked eyes with her, the weight of the past felt heavier than ever before. The crowd seemed to part like water as she stepped forward, her soaked hair clinging to her face. It was Lisa. Jack's heart thudded against his ribs as he took in her trembling form. Last time he saw her, she was leaving town, retreating from the shadows of grief that clung to her like mist in the morning. He hadn't thought she would come back, especially not during such a charged moment. "Jack," she began, her voice barely rising above the howling wind. The rain streamed down her cheeks, mingling with her tears. "I've come to find you. There are things I need to say." The urgency in her eyes cut through the noise around them. Jack felt the crowd shift, curiosity carving out a space for this confrontation. Sarah's expression shifted, a flash of concern fleeting across her features, but Jack barely noticed. All that mattered was Lisa standing there, raw and vulnerable. "Whatever you need to say, we're listening," he urged, making a gesture for the crowd to settle. The murmurs quieted, the gravity of the moment hanging heavily. Lisa drew in a shaky breath, seeming to wrestle with the words. "After everything, I thought I could bury it. But the weight of our past, I can't carry it anymore. Not just for me, but for my child." She placed a hand gently over her belly, a protective gesture that resonated deeply in the tense air. Jack felt a knot tighten in his chest. Her pain was palpable. "You don't have to carry it alone. We can face it together. We are all here for you," he said, stepping a little closer, his heart aching for her. "I thought silence would protect us, but it did the opposite," Lisa confessed, her voice breaking. "I was afraid, Jack. Afraid of the truth, afraid of losing what little I had left." The crowd responded with nods of understanding, voices whispering stories of their own struggles and fears of loss, grieved dreams, and the quiet battles they had fought. Jack saw the connection forming, threads of empathy weaving among them like a tapestry interlaced with sorrow and hope. Suddenly, the figure who had spoken earlier, the one warning about those who wanted to keep the truth buried, pushed forward. "We can't let this turn into chaos. You don't know what happens when you dig up the past." His tone was sharp, an edge of panic betrayed by his trembling hands. Jack felt the tension spike around him. "What you fear is exactly what we need, because fear has kept us shackled for too long." His own voice rose over the growing anxiety in the crowd. We're not here to create chaos but to heal. Lisa nodded fiercely, locking eyes with the man. I have lost so much already. I refuse to let the past dictate my future as a mother. We deserve to know the truth. Every one of us here does. With her words, the storm seemed to momentarily hush, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Jack's heart swelled with resolve that he hadn't felt before. Let us gather our stories, our truths, Jack encouraged, feeling the momentum shift. Together, let us shape a new path, one where every voice matters, where there's no place for shame or silence. A ripple spread through the crowd again, people exchanging glances, some even stepping forward, emboldened by Jack and Lisa's courage. They could feel change in the air, thick and electric, but even as hope blossomed, the man's defiance echoed like a timer. You might regret this, Jack. You can't control the fallout. The storm roared back to life, a ferocious reminder of the chaos lurking just outside their fragile bubble of solidarity. Jack felt both the weight of what was promised and the danger they were facing. What if those we love most are the ones holding the darkest truths? He pondered, bracing against both the rain and the uncertainty. As thunder rumbled through the sky, Jack locked eyes with Lisa once more. They were teetering on the edge of discovery, but what awaited them on the other side could change everything. Could they handle the truth that lay buried beneath their stories, or would it destroy the fragile connection they had just begun to forge? The rain fell in torrents, each drop a shimmering reminder of the fears, regrets, and hidden truths they all carried. Jack stood at the center of the storm, feeling the electric tension all around him. The crowd that had once been divided now teetered on the edge of unity, drawn together by the prospect of truth and healing. Are we ready? He shouted, pulse quickening, eyes sweeping over the determined faces. Are we ready to break the chains of our past? The murmurs that rippled through the crowd turned into nods, hesitant but growing stronger. Lisa faced him, fear and determination warring in her eyes. I'm ready to share what I've kept hidden, she said, her voice trembling but cutting through the storm. I owe it to my child. We owe it to everyone who has suffered. Jack felt the hearts in the crowd resonate with her plea. Their hunger for change, the thirst for connection, filled the air like sweet perfume. He glanced at Sarah, whose expression mirrored his own. I can't believe we're doing this. But this was not just about them. This was about Maplewood finding its voice again. Together. Jack yelled, feeling the surge of emotion ignite within. Together we can build the future we deserve. A future where we stand up and face the darkness that has lingered too long. As if answering his call, the winds shifted, calming. A sense of anticipation electrified the air, binding them as one. Jack took a step forward, and the crowd followed, each footfall echoing like the beating of unified hearts. They formed a tight circle, hands clasping one another's, each connection a lifeline against the overwhelming past. Let us hear it, Jack encouraged gently. Let us hear the truths that need to be told. Eleanor was the first to speak, her voice shaky but rising stronger with each word. I lost my husband in the mine collapse. We always felt the town's grief, but it felt like the wound must stay hidden for it to heal. Others began to step forward, sharing their stories, fingers trembling, hearts pounding, but their voices growing louder. I was afraid to speak up, afraid of raising the ghosts of the past. Each admission sliced through the air like thunder, openly shattering the silence that had cloaked Maplewood for years. Then, a voice rang out from the back, filled with anger and fear. None of this will change anything. You're only opening old wounds. It was the man who had warned Jack earlier. But instead of retreating, their resolve deepened. Each story matters. Sarah shouted, stepping forward to stand beside Jack. We can't move on if we don't acknowledge our pain. The man faltered, the fire of their determination sparked confusion in his hard-set demeanor. Then a moment of silence enveloped them, as if the storm paused to listen. Nathaniel took a deep breath before adding, but going forward is a choice. We can honor our past without allowing it to consume us. It's time to push back against those shadows. Jack's heart soared with hope. Would they truly march toward the light together? It will take courage, he reminded them. But we are stronger when we band together. We've spent too long letting fear and shame rule our lives. The crowd shifted again, an undercurrent of agreement sweeping through them. As each voice offered their truth, confessions poured out like rain, cleansing their shared history. Families began to embrace, to hold each other as the walls that had stood for so long crumbled in the storm. Let us build bridges, not walls, Lisa said, her resolve shining through her fear. This town deserves a chance to heal. She turned, eyes filled with purpose, her hand resting over her belly, a promise of the future. Jack felt a rush of protective warmth engulf him. In that moment, he knew that they were reshaping Maplewood together. The weight on his shoulders lightened, replaced by a heart swelling with hope. This was what it meant to truly connect, to share the burdens and the joys alike. The crowd erupted into a mix of applause and shouts, an agreement buried in emotional catharsis that echoed through the square like a symphony of shared mourning. And newfound courage. Are we ready to take our first steps forward? Jack implored, raising his voice above the din, palpable determination coursing through him. Together we can face our demons. Together we can write a new story for Maplewood. The heavy clouds above seemed to part momentarily, a sliver of golden sunlight breaking through. As the warmth washed over him, Jack knew they would fight not just for the present but for every soul lost, to honor the past while courageously embracing a new tomorrow. In that shared moment, Jack felt the spirit of Maplewood buoying him, a comforting embrace eliciting joy and optimism. The beginning of a new chapter had begun, a promise not of easy days ahead but of a stroll united, transforming their pain into strength, and their hope into action. With trembling hearts and newfound determination, they began the first steps into the unknown together, a town ready to reclaim its voice. And as the wind whispered through the trees, Jack realized something profound: the real journey was only just beginning, but for the first time, they were moving forward as one. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share.